It was a trademark yet futile maneuver for Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, whose stunts of escapology were matched only with his drug smuggling acumen. Around 17 Mexican Marines who raided his ranch nearby would catch the Mafia leader soon enough. 6 months before this, El Chapo had humiliated Mexican authorities by fleeing Mexico's most secure prison, his second jailbreak in the past 20 years. This time, El Chapo would not slip through their fingers, even though those who caught the leader were left in no doubt how angry the drug smuggler was to have been arrested. 3 years on, El Chapo has been handed a life sentence plus 30 years after he was found guilty of conducting international drug smuggling in a 3-month trial that exposed all of his criminal empire. At his sentencing in New York, he said that he had received an unfair trial and his treatment in solitary confinement was equivalent to torture. Guzman is the oldest of 7 children born into a low-income family in the rural community of La Tuna in Sinaloa State, northwest Mexico. His father, Emilio Guzman Bustillos, and mother, Maria Consuelo Luero Perez, used to earn their living from farming. El Chapo's father was officially a cattle rancher but is believed to have been an opium poppy farmer. His enterprising spirit was seen from a young age. Guzman would support his family by selling oranges to farmers for a few pesos. His penchant for the spoils of wealth did not go unnoticed either. In a podcast, Guzman's younger sister Bernarda said that he would wear fake gold jewelry when visiting family members. Guzman's first foray into organized crime came at 15 when he cultivated his marijuana plantation with his cousins. Then he adopted the nickname El Chapo, Mexican slang for shorty. Guzman left La Tuna in his late teens to seek his fortune in drug smuggling. That better life would come at a cost which was paid for by illegal drugs and years of bloodshed. And from his beginnings as a hitman, his rise through the ranks of the criminal underworld was swift. The former cartel kingpin Hector El Güero Palma gave Guzman his first break in Guadalajara in the late 1970s when Guzman oversaw a shipment of drugs from the Sierra Madre Mountains. He was quite ambitious and eager to increase the quantities of drugs being transported. Guzman's reputation for ruthless efficiency was noted. Then, in the 1980s, he was introduced to Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, who is known as the godfather of the notorious Guadalajara cartel, and someone who put him in charge of handling logistics. And when Gallardo was arrested in 1989, his cartel's drug trafficking territories were suddenly divided among different factions, which were later known as the Federation. El Chapo was a beneficiary and set up his own Sinaloa cartel with other traffickers in northwest Mexico. In the 1990s, El Chapo honed his operation, pioneering the use of sophisticated underground tunnels to move drugs across the border. He invested his proceeds wisely, expanding his enterprise and building infrastructure that benefited locals in Sinaloa too. This cemented his popularity. With time, Guzman's cartel became one of the most significant traffickers of drugs in the U.S., and in 2009 he entered the Forbes list of the world's richest men at number 701, and had an estimated worth of $1 billion. As the cartel leader's wealth and empire grew, so did scrutiny from law enforcement. In the year 1993, a Roman Catholic cardinal was shot in a turf war with competitor drug smugglers. Guzman was among those blamed, and the Mexican government placed a bounty on his head. His mustachioed face, previously unknown to the public, started appearing in newspapers as well as on TV screens, and just within weeks he was arrested in Guatemala. Then he was later sentenced to 20 years in prison on charges of drug trafficking, conspiracy, as well as bribery. The jail psychological profile described him as egocentric, narcissistic, shrewd, discriminating, persistent, tenacious, meticulous, and secretive, according to some reports. In prison, El Chapo enjoyed a life of luxury, smuggling in lovers, prostitutes, as well as Viagra. Being behind bars for 8 years was enough for Guzman. In January 2001, El Chapo broke out of a top-security jail known as Puente Grande. Guzman did so, as the myth goes, in a laundry cart. What's more likely, numerous journalists and authors argue, is that he simply walked out of the door with the help of corrupt guards. He even controlled the prison to such an extent he escaped in a police uniform. Moreover, the drug lord would spend the next decade evading authorities and consolidating his power as Mexico's preeminent drug smuggler. He seemed to be one step ahead of would-be captors and rival cartels during that period. Then, after 13 years on the run, El Chapo was captured by Mexican Marines called in by Hogan in February 2014. His second prison break in 2015 was arguably even more unbelievable than the first. and this time his gang members used GPS to burrow a 1.5-kilometer tunnel which led directly under his cell in Altiplano prison in Mexico. In the ensuing years, Guzman hid in the mountains of Sinaloa and many other parts of Mexico, and he used bribery, violence, and a large network of informants to help him remain a fugitive from justice. Guzman would occasionally dine out in public, sending his shooters into a fancy restaurant ahead of El Chapo to confiscate the phones of the other patrons, and then returning the devices and paying for everyone's meal after he would have finished eating. Guzman then continued to grow his drug trafficking empire, which grew into America's biggest supplier of illegal narcotics. The U.S. government offered around $5 million reward for information leading to Guzman's arrest. The break that ultimately led to Guzman's capture came on February 20, 2014, when law enforcement agents traced down a signal from a cell phone belonging to one of Guzman's bodyguards to the Sinaloa resort. And that same night, a group of Mexican Marines and a small assemblage of agents from the American Drug Enforcement Agency, along with the Department of Homeland Security, as well as the United States Marshals, gathered in Mazatlan, where they all had traced a cell phone signal to a condominium building known as the Hotel Miramar. On February 22nd, the Marines found Guzman's armed bodyguard protecting the entryway to one of the apartments at the Miramar. He quickly realized that he was outnumbered. The guard surrendered, and the Marines stormed the apartment. Inside, they found El Chapo, his wife and young twin daughters, and a personal chef and nanny. The drug lord ran into a bathroom to give himself up moments later. No shots were fired during his arrest. When Guzman was apprehended, the Sinaloa cartel was believed to be operating in some 50 countries. In the U.S., where the drug boss had been named in multiple indictments, Attorney General Eric Holder called the drug lord's capture a landmark achievement. He said, "The criminal activity El Chapo allegedly directed contributed to the death along with the destruction of countless lives across the world through drug addiction, violence, as well as corruption." El Chapo would not stay incarcerated for very long. In July 2015, Guzman escaped using a tunnel that led from the prison shower, and the only place where cameras could not spot him, to a construction area about a mile away. Guzman used a ladder to get down to the tunnel approximately 30 feet underground. He then hustled down the less than 6-foot tall and 30-inch wide tunnel and disappeared within 25 minutes of being spotted getting into the bathroom by security cameras. And after a 6-month manhunt, El Chapo was finally captured again in early 2016. After a lengthy court battle, the drug smuggler was extradited to the United States to face a 17-charge indictment. In February 2019, El Chapo was found guilty of all charges. Then on July 17, 2019, a federal judge in New York City sentenced him to life in prison. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed today's video and found it interesting, then make sure to leave us a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell icon to be always updated with the most exciting content as soon as it's uploaded. Thanks for watching. See you again soon in another video.